Welcome to the Sunstone Health Podcast, hosted by storyteller Justin Starbird and Josh Resnikoff, co-founder and CEO of TMA Precision Health. This podcast brings you inside the movement that's reshaping how we diagnose, treat, and care for patients who have spent years searching for answers. At the heart of it all, TMA's mission is to end the diagnostic Odyssey through AI, data-driven insights, and expert human guidance.
Welcome back to the Sunstone Health Podcast. My name is Justin Starbird, and yes, I'm laughing already because behind the scenes, I have a great guest today. I'm always joined by Josh Resnikoff, the CEO and founder of TMA Precision Health, but today we get to welcome Dr. Paul Carney, a man of many professions. He is
being very generous.
internationally recognized for epilepsy and its research, neurodevelopment, autism, pediatrics, all around a wonderful humanitarian. Guys, welcome to the show today.
Thanks for having us.
Good to see you and Josh.
Always.
I feel like we should have started this hit record 15 minutes ago just to catch all the behind the scenes. So hopefully we capture that today. It is really neat to have you on, Paul. And, you know, I'm curious, how did you guys get to meet each other?
Yeah, I'll bring the green room into it. But Josh, you want to start?
How did we meet? I actually don't recall how we got.
I do know.
Do you?
I do.
Oh, no, I do know. So there's a family that Paul advises in Missouri that has a daughter with a very challenging autism diagnosis. And so I got connected to the dad of this family, and through that dad got connected to Paul as a potential solution to deploy across the University of Missouri's entire academic space and into the autism center down there. Paul and I met there trying to really affect systems-wide change from what TMA does to provide professional excellence to all of these families that couldn't access it. And through it, we just developed a really good friendship and working relationship. And now that Paul is out in the world, a free agent, I don't know what you want to call it, Paul, but we get the opportunity to work a lot more closely together and unencumbered.
That's true. I'll give you a little more backstory, though. So this father came to me, which I think is really, germane to what we're going to talk about today a little bit, is the father and mother, both very educated, alumni, University of Missouri, resources, connections, access wasn't a problem. Okay. They can go anywhere they want. And they came to me with their child, little girl who, had this seemingly looked autistic. She is autistic. And they wanted to know why. Somebody said, you should go see Carney. He maybe can help you, give us new answers. Make a long story short, we then did some genetic testing. This child was 6 years old. First time he had genetic testing. And came up with a very rare disorder, actually was discovered by a very prominent person in Cambridge, England, in 2015, and it came back with this very specific mutation. And the father said to me, well, why didn't we know this before? I can't answer that. Okay. Why didn't we do genetic testing before? I said, because probably they thought your child was autistic. She is. And a lot of people don't feel that, there's this sort of trend that maybe you have autism. We don't know why. We know that over 50% of children with autism have an underlying genetic disorder. So what that means is you get, and with that information, Dad then looked at me. I remember it was a Monday afternoon at 4:00. He looked at me and he said, what can we do about this? I said, well, there's no treatment. If you want, research. And I said, but here's what you need to do. You need to decide what you want to do. And I hooked them up with some people out west. There was a meeting. I sent him out there, hooked him up to all these folks. That's where he met Josh. And he came back and he said, I met Josh. He met some other people as well. And I don't want other people, other families to experience the same thing we did, which was we didn't have a diagnosis. We didn't know what it was. We were going from doctor to doctor. And, and I said, well, partner with me. Let's get more genetic testing for families who don't know, both from the newborn period moving forward. And that's where we met Josh. And Josh and I started talking. We started, things got a little complicated with the university's agenda, if you will, versus what we need to do for our families. That's a challenge. I said, we're not done yet. And that's how we got to know each other. And over time, I realized that, wow, what Josh is doing is quite unique. It's very much needed. And no one would disagree with that. That's kind of how we met. And over time, my job is to put people together. My job is to make things happen. I'm hoping we can still make things happen at the state level, at the national level and beyond, with genetic testing, helping families with that journey they just don't know.
Yeah. Well, and Paul, I would say also that a big part of what we're doing now is really leveraging you, empowering you to be that level of professional voice, professional guidance for these families all over the country, right?
Well, what I didn't tell you was that when I saw what you were doing, because I sit on NIH panels, I sit on Department of Defense research panels, and so forth, NSF. My background originally was engineering. And so I became a doctor by default. And when I saw what you were doing with the data and the information, of course, I put on my computational hat. Okay, well, this is interesting. Okay, because early in my career, we were using data to predict seizures. We were well funded, very well known for this. Okay, internationally, we got pretty good at it, And so what I saw you doing, I thought, wow, this is an engineer out of a good address. He knows what he's doing. How can I help? And I'm personally interested because I find it exciting what you're doing. Because we all have opportunities, right? We have options, and this was a good option. But anyway, we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves here, but go ahead.
No, you did it. That's great. Actually, it leads me right into, one of the topics we want to talk about is, as you look at that diagnostic journey, the Odyssey, as Josh calls it, to go through to identify, what a diagnosis, could be, into that father's, plight where he's like, why don't we know this? What is that like out there? You're on the front lines, the severity of it. How are you, defining that or trying to fight through the red tape?
The red tape is getting better, partly because I think people at all levels are realizing that if you want to understand something, you want to treat something, you want to provide prognosis, not just for your child, but for your family, then you need information. Information is how we make decisions. Okay, that's point one. Point two is that, physicians has always relied on tools. If we go back, the stethoscope, the image, the brain MRI and so forth, right? This is another tool. And
you mean AI?
AI, yeah, tool. And so, but you have, what feeds into that tool, right, is information, right? Data, okay? And as an engineer, this is what we call binary data. It's a 0 or a 1, okay? There's nothing in between. I always work with non-binary data, okay? This is beautiful data because it's binary, okay? It is or it isn't, okay? But there's a lot of stuff in between in order for us to understand what we call variance that maybe isn't a 0 or a 1, or it is or it isn't. Okay? And that's where we bring other information into the mix so we can understand this. Physicians cannot do this. We always say there's maybe 1 to 2% of the physicians that can do this pretty well. They can assimilate. They can look at historical data. They can look at what I call the breadcrumbs. We're talking about that this morning. The breadcrumbs are all there. How do you put them all together? But most can't do it. And even those that can do it, it's just not practical, okay? It's just too much information. And when you get into genetics, which is to say our evolution, who we are as a species, that's even more complicated. So the data drives this, the models drive this, but we start with, obviously, we have to access that data. We have to get buy-in. The price point for genetic testing has come down considerably. I've seen the evolution. If you had this conversation 10 years ago, I would tell you the only thing we would do is a karyotype, okay? Then we had microarray, which is pretty nonspecific. It's basically kind of 100,000 feet, 30,000 feet, I should say. Then we came up with what's called panels. Those are nice. You got to know what you're looking for. We also realized not everything that is genetic looks genetic, which is where the Odyssey comes from. And so now we have, next generation sequencing and beyond, which I think is what is exciting. The real question, though, is what to do with the data. And that's where, as a clinician, I'll put my clinical hat on. I'm in the patient, I'm a clinician, I'm not this other person, right? We need to first understand what parents want to know. And they want to know, what does my child have? Did I do something? Could it be prevented? The answer is obviously no. And what can I do? And like I told this parent, well, get involved. Yeah. More genetic testing, research, treatment. We're in an age now where the Genome Project has really led to huge opportunities for treatments, gene therapies, antisense oligonucleotides, and what we call repurposing drugs that are already out there, or new drugs. And just to end, we know that there are more rare diseases collectively than there are common diseases. We don't need more. We have very good treatments for treating common diseases like diabetes, hypertension. We have very little for treating these other rare. There are around 15,000 rare diseases, no treatments. And they make up at least 40% of all the diseases. And they're the ones that are driving the healthcare costs in industrialized countries. In less developed countries, these children don't make it beyond a year or 2 or 5 years.
Yeah,
that's for another conversation. But so there's a lot of excitement, and also just you probably know, pharmaceutical industries and tech industries are always looking for new opportunities, and we know that this is that huge unmet opportunity. But
we're gonna get in. We'll get into that part in a little bit. I love how you kind of nail it on the head there in terms of what the families are actually looking for and the questions that they're asking, because it does become really personal. And you mentioned to the father that, hey, get involved, do more research. But on the other hand, you have gone deeper and wider into these conversations than most. And, certainly that is appreciated because, what you're finding, of course, is leading to the new discoveries, is leading to proper diagnosis, new diagnosis, and then treatment plans. What made you decide to, really put your money where your mouth is in terms of your time? Because at this stage of your career, for sure, time is more precious than even, money. So, I know we're thankful here from sitting in our seats. But what led you to really get so emotionally connected?
Well, this is my life, basically. For people that embrace medicine, it becomes their life, okay, their career, okay. It's really what they do. I love this, and I personally, it gives me a lot of personal satisfaction, raises my, dopamine or my, whatever, I feel good when I do this. Okay. And I just,
so you're selfish. You're selfish. Paul, that's it, Josh. We figured it out. He's selfish.
Yeah. So I like it. I want to help people. I want to make a difference. So that's why I went into medicine. Okay. I have a daughter who's now in med school up in Michigan, and she's the same way. I can tell she wants to make a difference, and we get paid well enough. Okay. We're not going to be, multimillionaires. So that's not our goal. Okay. But we get paid well. It's a good lifestyle. It's a good life. Okay. And to be engaged in an area, no matter what it is, at the fullest extent, and you can bring that information back to the families, it's very rewarding. I was a professional board member for the Epilepsy Foundation of America. And, and I enjoyed those interactions with a diverse group of people, okay? And we were always focused on our patients, okay? And we were here and I trained several graduate students, PhD students, and I hope I impressed them on them that you have a purpose. You have a purpose-driven life, and it's going to be a good life, and you're going to get a lot of personal rewards from this, but you're going to hopefully help a lot of people too, whether it be research, industry, patient care, whatever. So I don't see it as a sacrifice at all.
So, incredible.
I'm not the only one, too. There are several people in my field. I don't think they speak out enough, okay? There are people much more generous with their time and their expertise than me. I would consider myself not that unique. So we just don't get enough airtime. But so thank you for doing this, by the way, okay?
Well, I mean, I think, like I make the joke, a little self-deprecating maybe, but like if I just wanted to make money, I'm pretty good at math and I could have gone to work on Wall Street, right? But that life is not, it didn't hold the promise of fulfillment the way that, like, I've been involved in translational medicine my entire scientific career, right? I was a bench scientist before I got into this, but it was always in things that had direct application. I wasn't really in basic research. I wasn't in sales or anything like that. I was always in how to figure out something that actually made a difference for people's lives. And I think, for me, the work that we're doing here and together is such a direct application of that, right? Like you have actually treated patients. I'm obviously not a medical doctor, but if I can help scale the Paul Carneys of the world so that we can go off and help more and more patients, not just the people who can find their way to you, but we can go bring them to you. I mean, there's nothing that will make me, and hopefully us, prouder at the end of the day, right?
Your soul is good. I can tell too. I don't work with everybody. Okay, so that's what I didn't tell you. Okay, was that a pretty good sense of people that have their heart into it, and we need industry. We need industry partnership. We need public-private partnerships. We need those. Okay, that's just how academia can only get to a certain point. I actually started my career working for DuPont and Diamond Shamrock. I went through the whole training, sales, supply chain, all that. It was in pre-law, law. And they sent me back to a individual's lab in Cleveland. He's just come from Harvard. He's pretty well known, Jerry Silver. He just passed away. He was one of the first entrepreneurs, formed a company called Gliatech back in the early 90s. It did well, and then something happened. But anyway, he formed another company called New Gen. It's actually doing quite well. But Jerry always felt that we should take our science to the bedside. And the only way to do that is through industry partnerships. I totally get that, okay? And so I understand I hope I understand the various roles of the various entities, academia, industry, hospitals, payers. I get that, okay? Ultimately, you would hope anybody in a leadership position wants the same thing, which is help our patients. But we also have, other obligations, right? And I get that too, right? So yeah. So I think Josh is well positioned. It's new. It doesn't have that, that kind of Toyota branding yet, but it will, I think, eventually. Okay, so
all right, we'll get
I'd love to be the Toyota of rare disease care. That would be amazing.
You know what I mean? That broad, yeah.
So thinking of that, though, one thing about Toyota is that they are reliable, safe. Right now we're also dealing with systemic failures to identify or properly diagnose these rare diseases, and it's of course, that's what they call the Odyssey, right? The journey is 6 or 7 years, and people are not finding answers. Why do you think that is? Where do you think that it should be fixed? Where is is there a linchpin that we're missing?
Yeah, there is. There actually is.
Okay, awesome. What is it?
So I'm going to start I always like to start at where the problem originates. Okay, what is the issue? Okay. And because, I'm a clinician, I see all kinds of patients. People don't know I do other stuff. I'm the doctor, okay? So I've had this discussion with genetic counselors, okay? So we were looking at a bill in Missouri to get genetic testing for all newborns, okay? And this is where it got held up. We don't have enough genetic counselors. Mm-hmm. And the genetic counselor looked at me and said, yikes. And what would you do with the information if you had it? This is what the genetic counselors tell me. This is a cohort of people, right? Now, not everybody feels that way, but certain. And I said, well, obviously we'd tell them what they have. We would help inform them, prognosis, what have you. Because a lot of families think their child's going to die, right? We say, you're not going to die. these are the treatments. We can go look up treatments. So the linchpin, I think, is the throughput. It's the throughput, okay, and that's where I think the technology can make up the difference. We need genetic counselors to look at it and make sense, to be a clinical relevance, right? But the tools can help them. We're not there to compete with the counselors or me. We're here to facilitate work in partnership with the technology. They're coming around, okay, but that's one. The second is the cost, okay, and traditionally genetic testing was very, very expensive, out of reach for most. Could not, and families would have to sign an agreement that if the insurance or the hospital didn't pay for it, that they would, and that's not ethical, right? So we make sure we get it paid right up front. And so the cost has come down exponentially compared to where it was some years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just going to keep getting cheaper and cheaper. It's kind of like, if you remember, if you bought a computer several years ago, it was like the equivalent of $20,000, right? You can buy one now for $500, right? So anyway, that idea, it'll keep coming down as more end users. The second is awareness. There's so many genetic disorders, and ones we don't even know about, the one I mentioned earlier, that people don't know where to go with this. And there needs to be more education at the medical school. I teach medical students, more education among the community and so forth, right? So I think there's a combination of the two, but that's just a question of time. Mm-hmm.
But this is also almost the built to suit application of AI, right? Because the informational context space that Paul's referring to, of there's just so much information out there. No single person could be reasonably be expected to be an expert about all rare diseases, let alone about one or two rare diseases. And then all of a sudden you're left, if that was going to be the model that we practice medicine on, you're left with the idea that one patient, wherever they are, has to go find that other doctor wherever they are who knows how to treat that singular disease. And that is an entirely inefficient way for us to be advancing medicine for that family that is in need, right? So to the point of, a stethoscope is a great tool to use for understanding what somebody's heart rhythm sounds like. AI is a fantastic tool for us to go off and get the informational space around what the specific disease state for an individual is, provided we have the right diagnostics in place, which we can now because of the cost, right? So we're really at that nexus of opportunity for a solution like TMA to really be in existence. I mean, we wouldn't have existed 5 years ago. It just wasn't the right time or place for it.
Well,
I agree.
No, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say that I thought about this, and I thought, we have electronic medical records, right? And they're quite good, but they're mostly for billing,
right?
But all the data's there, and when you look at trends, see, with all these disorders, they have one thing in common is, well, two things. One is most physicians or providers react to whatever is happening. They're not proactive. They don't get ahead in front of it, okay? So in other words, one example is Dravet's disease or spinal muscular atrophy. We know that if you diagnose early enough, you can basically save that person around 30 to 40 IQ points over life. If you diagnose late, the horse is out of the barn. You cannot put it back. It's not that it's a genetic disorder anymore. It's everything else that's downstream, okay?
Right.
So, but the electronic medical records are there.
But that also, going back to that, because this is where I was going to go with it, and you're leading me into, or the conversation's lending itself to go there, is those are the consequences of not having a diagnosis early, and that losing IQ points, let alone going back to your point about the insurance and who's actively responding to it, not proactively creating a plan. Now you're talking financial as well, and then emotional, because now you're putting that baggage or that guilt onto the parents because they didn't know that they had an opportunity to catch it, months or years ago. And now, they've gone down this road where they have to live with that. and the worst part is that they feel responsible because they didn't get to solve it. But in there, no parent, I mean, Josh, you're an anomaly where you were able to, take something and start something as a result of it. But it's still been, 6 years since you began to get us to this point. So it's still not an overnight thing. Unfortunately, I don't think you're carrying around that same emotional,
No,
baggage with it.
my son's 10 years old. We haven't solved his problem yet. And every time he has a flare up or a pain, I mean, it's as a parent, you want to do anything you can to help your child, right? So for me, it's incredibly frustrating that we still can't get to the bottom or find some sort of relief for my son. But the idea that we can do that for so many other families, right? Like why wouldn't we go help all those families that we can? It's to me, there's a moral imperative about bringing this out to everyone as fast as possible, so that for those families that aren't in a position to get care, they get the care that they deserve. It's a very simple equation for me.
And it's not just your classic genetic either. I mean, I give two brief examples. One is a child who was transferred to us with a genetic disorder called SCM1A or Dravet. Later, I knew he had this. How did I know he had this? Because they had given him a drug that activates the sodium channel that made him worse. And
Right.
he seized for like 12 hours. And the imaging showed the brain injury. There was not enough oxygen during that seizure. So he has a permanent brain injury for something that didn't have to happen. Now, if you go back and look, this was all predictable. And so it's not just treating, it's what not to treat with. The second example is actually the worst for me. This is the worst I've seen. A kid came in 4 times. 4 times. They called me up and said, hey, can go see this kid. The mother was a doctor, the father was a doctor, I said, sure. I went in the room. I looked at the labs. The genetic testing was there. The kid had brain leukemia for 4 months.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was a rare genetic variant. And so I sent him out to the West Coast because they had a protocol for this. And the parents asked me, why did it take so long? I said, well, I really can't answer that, but we have an answer. Okay. Yeah. And he said, well, the information was there. Nobody could interpret it.
Right.
Didn't know what to do with it. Couldn't put together the breadcrumbs, as I say, into a cohesive practice. By the time it got to me, it was obvious. Okay. And they had all these weird diagnoses, trauma, he was vomiting, gastroenteritis, the list went on, everything. So that's what doctors look for. They look for the more common things, which is where common things are common, right? But these are uncommon things, but have consequences. And that's where I think, you need more information, more tools. And
just to
would you
follow
agree
up
with
on
that,
that,
Josh, or no? Would you agree with that assessment?
I totally
those
agree
are
with
two
that.
extreme examples. One is a rare disease, 1 in 40,000. The other one is not that rare, okay?
Right.
One is a death, the other one's not death. So it's like, okay, same idea, right?
I don't think that doctors are inherently trying to do anything wrong. I think everybody is trying to do their best along the way. You have doctors who are
nice. I wasn't very nice to the resident when she said I said it was trauma, and then she said Munchausen by proxy. I looked at her sideways and I said, "Whoa, wait. The information's right there. Did you look at that? Did you know what that meant?" Okay.
Well, but that's it. Did you know what that meant? And the answer is no. I've never seen it before. I don't have the context of experience to understand what I'm looking at. I've never done the research to understand it, right? And that's where we are really trying to close that gap and give those people on the front lines all the information that they can need or require to go off and make the proper diagnosis. But this, to me, I mean, like, the kids are put on Keppra, even though most kids don't respond well to Keppra, right? You have individuals, let alone the fact that they're children, who effectively become their N of 1 guinea pig for their own clinical trial to figure out what drug is going to work for them. And that, like, poking a stick into a black box to try to figure out how this drug is going to work for you is medieval, in my opinion. And the fact that we have these solutions that we can deploy in to give families at least a basis of understanding for maybe the things that will work, but definitely the things that are not going to work. Right. So you're not going to go spend a lot of time doing that. again, to me, the equation is very straightforward.
I think also that clinical trials, how drugs are approved by the FDA, we're going to see a change. We're going to start using more what's called in silico prediction. In other words, we use the data. We can have enough data, we can predict. The placebo-controlled trials maybe could be a thing of the past. But the other problem is the medical training, as Justin, the training is, trained physicians, it's a little bit out of step with what's happening. When I was trained, I had a pretty good memory, so okay, I could memorize this stuff, okay, and I would show off. I memorized all this stuff, okay, I knew it, okay. That's worthless today, worthless. I go on a computer and look it up. Why do I need it, okay? What I need is the data, and more importantly, I need what's called, and this is where the physician can play an important role. I need to learn how to hone my critical thinking. So if you show me, for example, a readout from AI, I still have to look at it and say, does it, us humans still do that pretty well. Does it still make sense? If you told me, for example, a certain syndrome is occurring at a certain age range, like say a brain tumor, I said, well, that never occurred in that age, okay? Maybe it does. Maybe there's something there. Maybe the AI is telling me something I didn't see before, but I don't think so. And by the way, I don't have a treatment. Let's look at this other example. Yeah, that I get. Okay, that probably is it. Okay, and so forth. Right. So I can sort through it. It broadens our differential diagnosis. It doesn't replace the physician. I don't believe that it's going to replace. I think it will replace more the more common things like hypertension, maybe diabetes, things like that. But we're already seeing that with non-physicians, seeing patients. Okay, I think that will not change. But I think we're at the frontier. We're in the beginning of the frontier. We're at the very beginning of an exciting movement, industry moving forward. We are there. We are where, in 1890, there was a well physician who decided he was actually going to go in and examine the patients and come up with a differential at the bedside. Prior to that, they'd send off some serf and say, okay, bring back the urine, bring me back the blood, and I'll tell you what it is, sitting around a room, okay? Well, that became what we call semiology. In other words, he took the data that he collected with his own eyes and hands, put it together with the pathology, because they were all pathologists then, and came up with a diagnosis. That became the model for medicine as we know it today. That's where house officers came from. And I think we're seeing something like that today. It's just that new tool is called AI.
Right. So thinking ahead, I'll get you out of here on this.
Mm-hmm.
Not to tell.
I can be chatty on this because I love this topic, but that's fine. Okay, sorry.
Well, there's some meat on this bone still. So I think this is, Paul, I think what would be awesome is if we turn this into a series where, maybe have you on to talk more about the clinical element of things, because Josh, you and I, we are often talking about, what we're seeing out there on a myriad of other topics related to the business, not just how it's affecting folks. And so, what are you looking for, knowing how much has happened in the last 18, 24, 36 months in terms of development and technology advancement, what are you looking forward to as we move into 2026 and the next 12 to 18 months?
Is that for me or Josh?
That is for you, Dr. Paul Carney.
Oh, I thought about it.
We want to put you more on.
I'm going to put this out there. It's the first time that Josh has heard me say this, so he can feedback, okay? And I actually wrote it down. I'm going to read it. Deploy early detection methods at scale. That's point one, okay? In other words, more populations and health plans. I think health plans is where we need to go, okay? Medicare, Medicaid. Get them into those health plans. This should not be a second thought. This should be right up front. Integrate the genotype, the phenotype, and the outcomes data to refine targeted care pathways. We may not have a treatment for it, but for example, you don't need another MRI, you don't need another EEG, you don't need another Keppra. What you need is, you need a diagnosis and you need reassurance. And, someone like me, I can network and maybe get you connected with somebody who knows a lot more about this than I do, okay? And the third is, because this isn't just a local problem, it's a global problem. And even in underdeveloped countries, we know that there are very good treatments, say for HIV, in populations that have certain genetic risks. One of the areas I'm particularly interested in as a researcher is, why do we all look a little different when we have the same disorder? Why is it if you get COVID or I get COVID or you get the vaccine or I do, we have a different response? That's our genetics. That's our evolution. It's not why you get the disease, it's why you don't. So I think it's really exciting here is if you have this information, you can look for novel treatments that may be already out there. There's several high rollers right now. We see them. I won't mention the name out of pen. That's really driving this repurpose, drug, because there are a lot of treatments out there. It's not going to cost us more. We may have something out there. This drug Keppra that John's mentioned, it was a one-off. It failed clinical trials initially. It's called an SV2 presynaptic modulator. So it's a very novel mechanism. Well, nobody thought it would work. Another example is fenfluramine. Another one. It's a totally different mechanism. Nobody thought it would work. It was driven by the genetics. Okay, the insights, okay? I don't know if you know this, Josh, but it didn't work on the preclinical model, which was the pilocarpine model in rats. They put it into a genetic model. It worked.
Huh, did not know that.
Yeah. These are backstories. So, interesting. Anyway, so...
See, this is why we need a series.
Right. And so basically, it's a partnership to bring what I call actionable, I wrote this down for myself, precision medicine for everyday clinical practice. Shouldn't be, I'm going to think about it because it's a one-off, No, this should be, if you come in with developmental delay, autism, unknown diagnosis, you're going to do your typical routine lab, CBC, liver studies, and a genetic test. Mm-hmm. Even do that first. One example is muscular dystrophy. We no longer do biopsies. We haven't done a biopsy in 20 years, 10 years. We go straight to genetics. And not only genetics, but in the case of something called spinal muscular atrophy, these are kids that don't walk, we look at what's called this type 2 copy, because we know that drives the severity. You have 1 copy, 2 copies, 3 copies. We know that drives the severity. And they may also drive whether or not the insurance company allows you to use, there are 3 treatments for this right now, one or the other. So we need that information. You can't just have spinal muscular atrophy. You also need to know what's under the hood a little bit more, and that's genetic testing. Why? It drives diagnosis, drives prognosis, drives therapy. And it'll drive your conversation as you get what we call pre-authorization with the insurance company. I usually have a 95, 98, 100% success rate with them because I have this conversation. And so I think we need to empower our providers, our caregivers. We don't want to turn them into geneticists. They're already busy enough. We want doctors to go back to be what they're really good at. Be empathetic, caring listeners that have judgment, but have tools at their disposition that they can, we don't want a Winchester. We want, something more powerful than that, okay? Yeah. That they can go in and make the right call, okay? I'm not advocating guns, by the way.
Well, I love all of that. Justin, I don't know about you, but I mean, for me, that was the most succinct and spot on. Like, that is everything that I want to see. Well, I want to be a significant tool in the tool chest for doctors to get to the right treatment for their patient.
Yep.
I mean, view AI as an extension of your clinical practice. It's not a replacement. And let the physician handle. Let it recognize patterns at scale. It's really at scale. We talked about this.
Yeah.
And let doctors, focus on judgment, empathy, and basically, and decision making. Ultimately, it's going to be the doctor decision making. So what I'm going to be doing with Josh is I'm going to be that doctor in the box. I won't be making treatment. I won't be handling, but I'll look at the reports. I'll write a report. I'll advise my colleagues what they might want to be considering or not considering. Hopefully I have enough credibility to, that they'll listen. Okay. And behind a good team here. So I'm very comfortable with this. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're so happy to have you, Paul. I can't even tell you. I'm thrilled to get this underway. So, Justin, thanks for hosting this.
I love this series. So let me know. I'm happy to coordinate with you. If you want to send me some ideas, I'll bounce it back within 24 hours with some other things. Okay, usually I agree. If your team is good, by the way, the team that connected with me is top notch. Okay, and yeah.
You make it easy, Paul. This has been really wonderful to get to know you, get to meet you. So thankful that you're part of the team as well. And Josh, really looking forward to all that is to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And
Happy Thanksgiving.
thank you again. It's an honor speaking. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Well, on behalf of our guest today, Dr. Paul Carney and Josh Resnikoff, CEO and founder of TMA Precision Health, you've been listening to the Sunstone Health Podcast. Until next time.